In the last few days of the YNW Melly trial, a lot of evidence has been coming to light, and all of it just makes it feel like Melly really is a cold-blooded killer. If you have not been living under a rock, then you know that Melly has been accused of shooting his childhood buddies, YNW Sakchaser and YNW Juvy. All of this happened in 2018, and Melly initially reported the incident as a fatal drive-by incident. The case has finally made it to the court, and so far, the evidence presented by the state prosecution has been so overwhelming that Melly himself had a breakdown in the courtroom. In light of all of this insane evidence, we can't say for sure if Melly would get the death sentence, but we are going to know that pretty soon enough as the jury commenced deliberations hours ago. But in the meantime, take a look at how Melly reacted to all of it. How damaging is all of this new evidence? Is it possible that after everything went down in the last week of the trial, YNW Melly will beat the case and walk free? Let's dive in. So a lot of crazy stuff has gone down in the YNW Melly trial, and it has certainly got everyone talking. First, we must give it up to the state attorneys who have held it down since the trial began. There hasn't been a moment where Melly has had it easy since the trial began. In the final week, the state proved that they still had more aces up their sleeves to finally nail Melly for his crimes. So what is this bombshell evidence? Well, the state claims that Melly and Portland planned the drive-by shooting just to cover up their tracks. It was just an attempt to avoid being caught up in the murder of their friends, YNW Juvy and YNW Sakchaser. In fact, during the trial, they brought on this detective to recreate the whole scene of the crime in a way that would give the jury an idea of how it all went down. As a result of this illustration, there is no doubt that the gunshots that killed the victims came from inside the car. So even though Melly tried to make it seem like they were shot from the outside in a fatal drive-by shooting, the evidence finally proves otherwise. According to the detective, Juvy got shot in the head at a close range from the left side while facing forward. But that's not all. The detective also gave graphic details about the entrance wounds and the angles from which the bullets came.
The demonstrative photograph to show that you can fire a firearm from that position.
We are pretty sure that all of this has been taken in by the jury. We mean, it is pretty damn convincing when someone draws it out for you like that. Then there is also the surveillance footage that puts Melly together with Juvy and Sakchaser on the night they died. As you can see, Melly is over at the back left seat, just chilling while Juvy is in the front, and Sakchaser is in the back right seat. You see, if the bullets came from the left, then it pretty much means that Melly is the bad guy here. All medical examiners that testified in the double murder case confirmed that both victims were shot in the head from the left side. Everything really is starting to add up. In spite of this, would you be surprised to learn that there is a little glimmer of hope for Melly? During the course of the trial, there were a couple of small victories for the defense attorneys. Although none of them can prove that Melly is indeed innocent, they are still victories all the same. At some point, the prosecution kind of messed up in their filings and did not reveal a vital forensics report that they needed to drive their arguments home. Of course, leaving this out is a problem when it comes to the law. So just like that, the evidence did not make it to the trial. Who knows what it could be or how damaging it would have been for Melly. But Melly has got a lot more things to worry about. We mean things like his future. He has to have it at the back of his mind that if he's found guilty, he's looking at the possibility of spending the rest of his life in jail. If he is not locked up without parole, it will be the death penalty, which some people would prefer as the most severe and deserving punishment. So either way, things are not looking good for Melly. But if you thought we were done with all the juicy details from this case, then you might want to think again, because this case just keeps opening up like a can of worms. This guy, Trevion Glass, took the witness stand during the last week of the trial and made sure to drop some bombshells in court. Trevion used to make beats for YNW Sakchaser back in the day, so he knew his crew pretty well. Trevion was also in the studio that day, so he opened up about how things really went down at the studio before they all left that night. Notably, his testimony marked the first time that a witness actually took the stand to give a detailed first-hand encounter with Melly and the two victims. You might not have known about all this, but you definitely saw this viral video of him saying that he was not high during the hearing. So, Trevion explained the boys had this epic 12-hour recording session booked at the studio. Technically, it was not the full 12 hours because, obviously, they were all going to get tired and sleepy at some point, right? But here's the thing, though. It is a logical explanation for why they all left the studio super late that night. Speaking about the studio's surveillance tapes, Trevion confirmed that he saw Melly and another rapper called Fredo Bang jump into the red Mitsubishi. The prosecutors had tried to get Fredo to testify, but Fredo insisted that he did not want to show up in court. But Trevion's testimony was definitely enough to nail Melly. Trevion also testified that after he and the crew left the studio, they all went to Melly's place, but ended up at Fredo's crib. Now this is where things got interesting. Trevion noticed that Melly had changed his clothes at some point before they got to Fredo's crib. But when they asked him about what went down at Fredo's place, Melly had clammed up. He claimed he had been too lost in grief to talk. You see, none of this makes any sense, because it is just plain suspicious that both defendants changed their clothes and spent about 40 minutes cruising around instead of heading straight to the hospital to check on their injured friends. This is simply not what an innocent person would do. But it sounds like something someone trying to cover up their tracks would do. During the trial, there was a lot of discussion about the location of phones in relation to where the bullet casings were found. Detective Mark Moretti was brought on to shed some light on this in court, and the prosecution tried to use his testimony to link Melly and his phone to the car where the alleged crime took place. Detective Moretti said Sakchaser's phone was 100 meters from where the shell casings were found, while Melly's phone was about 400 meters from where the casings were found. This method of investigation relies on phone tower records, which is apparently not an exact science, so it is very likely that the defense would jump in and question the accuracy of the information from the phone tower records. Fredo Bangs might not have been present in court, but his name was frequently brought up during the trial. Apparently, Fredo was in touch with Melly right before and after things went down that night. Trevion also confirmed that Fredo Bangs met up with Melly that morning. It turns out that Melly and Fredo Bangs had been talking about money and making tour plans. But one thing these texts did was shine a light on their financial dealings and future ventures. It was definitely a long time coming, but finally the puzzle pieces were coming together. But the prosecutor still had one more trick up her sleeve, which caught Melly off guard. The prosecutor brought up a Western Union receipt with Melly's phone number and name on it. This receipt was just another way that nailed YNW Melly's involvement in the murder of Juvy and Sakchaser. As we said earlier, jury deliberations are currently underway, so we will learn about the 24-year-old rapper's fate soon enough. So what do you think the chances are for Melly? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section.